Hi everyone, today we're dealing with some problem plants in the garden. We're going to be digging some things up and either replacing them with something better or just moving them to a better location, and I thought I'd bring you along. If you're new to my channel, my name's Annette and this is Cottoverdi, and Richard and I garden here in South Buckinghamshire in the UK, which is equivalent to a zone 8B or 9A. They have moved recently. I'm really not sure what we are, but we're very typically English country garden, and we have a lovely old walled garden here, and this channel is all about bringing you along and showing you what we're doing in our garden and how we're creating the garden of our dreams. Today I thought I'd bring you along as we did something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So we've got some box balls. I've got one here next to this big pot that has yet to be filled, and I've got another one on the other side. So this is the edge of our patio right next to this really enormous rose arch that we've got. We're going to be taking those box balls out and replacing them with a thuja called danica. So the reason I'm taking the box balls out is many-fold actually. So the reason I am taking these rather large box balls out, they're probably, well, they're maybe 70 centimetres round, and I have been pruning them religiously every year. But the reason we're taking them out is because ever since I put them in, and they were much smaller when I put them in, we have been battling with something called the box moth caterpillar. And this is a caterpillar that feeds on box primarily all through the season and decimates them. So they basically eat all the leaves. The plant recovers, but it never looks any good. It always looks straggly and disgusting. Now, I've tried using pheromone traps, I've tried using a spray on the plants, I've tried picking the caterpillars off individually, which is very laborious even with a glass of wine in the evenings, and nothing seems to resolve this problem. So this caterpillar is widespread in this area, and I don't know how other people manage or cope with their box, but I just can't, and life is too short. And also I'm going to be replacing it with something, a thuja, that I don't have to prune. So not only is it super hardy, it's just something that I'm not going to have to shape. It's going to grow into a round shape itself. So we're taking these out. It's going to be quite a tough job, so I've waited for the weekend and Richard is going to help me dig them out, and then we will plant the thuja. Now the thuja I've got, let me grab one. So it is considerably smaller. It's really, what is that? That's about, well, 30 centimetres if we're lucky. So it's going to look quite dinky there actually, but you know, I'm in it for the long haul. We're going to be living here for quite a few years. These are really slow growing, so I'm not expecting any great spurts of growth. But this thuja, it's got this lovely emerald green foliage, and it's kind of got this browny tinge. So if it gets cold and it gets frosted, it does go browner in the winter, but then it turns into, you know, this colour all through the summer. And you don't have to prune this. It's only going to get to 50 by 50, so it will sort of get to about that size eventually after a number of years, but it'll never need to be pruned. It's just going to grow into a nice round shape, which brings me so much joy. Not only that, it's super tough, really easy to look after. We're going to give it a really good mulch around the root ball, and we'll do that every year, but it's not attacked by any caterpillars. If we had deer in the garden and didn't have a deer fence in this yew hedge here, then the deer might munch on it, but I don't know whether they do that a lot, but it shouldn't be bothered by any pests. So it's going to be this little statement here on the corner, both sides of the patio, where we're just going to be able to leave it, let it grow, and just enjoy the green colour. So I really do want like an evergreen full stop here, which is why I've chosen this plant. But it's going to look quite small. I am fine with that. I've got a massive, these are massive pots here. We're going to be planting those up later in the season. So subscribe if you like to see us planting these massive pots up. But I think I can cope with a slightly smaller evergreen plant. And I've bought it small for economical reasons. To get something this size, you know, its full grown size would be a couple of £100. So I've just gone smaller because I'm going to exert some patience whilst we wait for them to grow. So this is the kind of damage that the moth does. So you can see that the plants do recover, but then they're untidy because they need pruning. And the moment you prune them back, you get these bare, disgusting stems. And then you're living with this throughout the whole summer. And I just think it's really horrible. I mean, round this side, it's even worse. That looks horrible to me. So even though the plants recover, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. This is horrible. This is ugly and depressing. So because we took out a much bigger plant than the one we're going to put in, we need to add some compost. So we're just going to mix some compost into the bottom of this planting hole, and then we will feed them with some plant food as we plant them. I'll link the plant food below in case you're interested in what we use. It's not the Miracle Grow box that I've got here. We don't use Miracle Grow anymore. So what I'm doing is I'm just mixing the native soil in with the compost so that it's not only being planted with compost. So I'm going to put some plant food at the bottom. Not sure why that frightened Cosmo so much. And that actually looks really super healthy. So eventually it will form a nice ball, and actually it's going to be a little bit closer to the corner here, which is what I want. And I'm just going to heel it in. And then, even though it's drizzling today, I am going to water it as well. It's really important just to make sure there are no sort of air gaps. And then we'll give it a mulch. We'll give it a mulch. The mulch we use is well-rotted farmyard manure. So if you're using farmyard manure, just do make sure it's well rotted down, because otherwise it will burn your plants. But this really adds a lovely structure. It's going to keep moisture in, and it is also going to feed the plants. Yeah, whilst we're at it, I'm going to get Richard to mulch the base of these Harlow-Carr roses, because they need a good mulch. I haven't pruned these yet. I will get round to pruning them this month at some point. These are the prickliest roses, but they are absolutely stunning. I love Harlow-Carr, and I've got 3 of them here, and they have the most incredible fragrance right outside our kitchen door. But they also are just so beautiful. This is the last remaining box box of any description in the garden now, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to get rid of it. I am so sick of these things. So we did have one planted on either side, but this one was very sickly and we took it out ages ago, and what we did was we replaced it with a rose called Pride and Prejudice, and I love that rose so much that I now have another one. Obviously it's smaller because it hasn't been growing for as long, and we are going to take this box ball out, put it in the bin and plant the other Pride and Prejudice here. And I can't wait to have 2 Pride and Prejudice here. In fact, I'm kind of feeling like I might plant Pride and Prejudice all the way along this path. I think it will look absolutely spectacular. Pride and Prejudice is this gorgeous floribunda rose, and it has beautiful globe-shaped blooms they start white on the outside, quickly turn to cream, and then the centre is the most gorgeous peach colour. But the thing about this rose is it's so elegant, like it just looks perfect. It was named for, I think it was introduced for the 200th anniversary of the release of Pride and Prejudice, the Jane Austen book, and I do believe that some suppliers donate to a foundation. Whenever you buy a rose, they donate a tiny bit, which I think is also wonderful. But I think the rose really is so perfectly named. It's so apt because it is the most gorgeous, romantic, elegant rose. I love it so much, and I'm going to have another one here. Super excited. This is the other Pride and Prejudice here. We've got 2 yew hedges here. We've kind of tipped over the top of this one here, and we're trying to grow it into an arch. So I really want to have an archway there, and then I'm going to have the 2 roses here. I have a feeling I need to take out this peony here. It's probably not in an ideal spot anyway, because I've got a viburnum opulus here that shades it quite a lot so we don't see the blooms. So I think we're going to have to take it out anyway to get the rose into sort of an equal and opposite spot. So we'll be taking out the box and taking out this peony and planting it somewhere else. The box is going to go in the bin. I have offered it to friends and nobody wants it, and I don't blame them. So the box balls are just biting the dust. So floribunda roses are named because they have they have like a cluster of blooms on one stem, so many flowers on one stem. But the thing with floribunda roses that you may not know is they're derived from hybrid teas, and a combination of hybrid teas and another type of rose, I think beginning with P, I can't remember. But hybrid teas are generally really good as cut flower roses, whereas floribunda roses are sort of better as a display in the garden rather than as cut flowers. They don't tend to have quite such strong stems, and they don't necessarily all have a really strong fragrance. And I don't think Pride and Prejudice has a particularly strong fragrance, but the beauty of the blooms makes up for the lack of fragrance. Even though this rose is small at the moment, it will eventually grow to about 90 centimetres by 60 centimetres. The more I think about it, the more I desperately want to have more of them down this pathway. So this is how the rose is looking at the moment. It's definitely got some problems. There's quite a lot of blackening of the stems, and all those stems are a little bit weedy. So this came as a bare root a few months ago, and I just potted it up into this pot. So I'm going to take off all this dead growth and everything that looks weak and spindly, and probably just leave these thicker stems at the bottom. So I've chopped off everything that's dead, and I've left only stems that are pencil thickness. So I think that's a geranium. We're digging that out and just moving it to the corner. And then we need to dig out the peony. We're going to dig a really big root ball in the hope that it doesn't notice that it's being dug up. So now we've moved the peony to this corner here, which I think is going to look fabulous. It's really important when you're planting peonies not to cover the crown of the plant. You don't want to bury them too deeply or they're just not going to flower at all. And now that we've moved it, it might not even flower this year because, you know, peonies they're a bit fussy. They like time to settle in. It might flower, hopefully it will. Hopefully we dug up a big enough root ball that it's not going to notice that we moved it. But we'll see. So we're not going to mulch over the top of this, and I think the soil in this bed is really good anyway, because this is a bed we created using the no dig method, and so we've got a lot of topsoil and compost and farmyard manure in here, and I just think the soil's really nice. It is such a disgusting drizzly day. If you live in England you'll know what drizzle is, but drizzle is basically just like wet air. So it's sort of raining but not really raining, and it's just revolting, and it's cold. So I'm really glad that this is actually our last project for today. So we're down here at the bottom border. So this is a really long border that runs all the way along the bottom of our garden, and that's the bottom wall there, and our house is up there, which is weeding. And we're moving a plant here, so I'm not replacing it with anything at the moment, but I'm moving something. So I am moving a plant called Physostegia rose bouquet, which is a gorgeous lilac-y pink spike of blooms, and I absolutely love it. But I planted it in completely the wrong place. I have planted it on the very edge here in this corner, kind of where my spade is, and it's just too close to the edge because it grows to about nearly a metre, like 90 centimetres tall, and I've got a big clump of them. So they are wonderful, but I just don't want something that tall right on the edge. It's kind of in the way of a rose. I've got a rose planted behind it called Sweet Honey, and so it's blocking the rose. So we need to move this Physostegia, or obedient plant, further back in the border. Now, Physostegia, if you don't know it, it's really super easy to look after. They're like full sun, part shade. They are not generally bothered by bugs or anything like that. They're super easy to look after once you've planted them, and they don't even need staking, even though they're quite tall. But the best thing and the most fun thing about Physostegia is why it's called obedient plant. I filmed a little bit last summer, playing around, and I'll put it up on the screen. So I was playing around with the blooms on this Physostegia. So it's called obedient plant because you can rearrange the blooms to suit you, and they'll stay where you put them. So you can just sort of gently move the petals and they just stay, like they don't fall off, they don't break or anything like that. You just sort of move them around, and it's just so much fun. But I feel like I need more of this in my garden because it's just something fun to play with. But they're really great as cut flowers as well, particularly because you can rearrange them to face the side that you want them to face, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I highly recommend Physostegia, and this one is called Rose Bouquet, and it is a gorgeous, gorgeous colour. So we're going to dig it up and move it further back in the border. I do still want it here, it's gorgeous. This is sort of my peachy, purpley end of the border, so I do want it here. I just want the spikes to be further back so they're kind of popping up. So you can see I've got quite a big clump here, and it's spread out nicely. So I'm just going to dig all of it up and move it further back into the centre of the border. So Richard's just filling in the hole where we dug the Physostegia out, but I've planted it. I managed to separate it. So I planted 3 plants originally a couple of years ago, and we've separated it, I think, into 7 different clumps. I could have split it up more, but I wanted larger clumps just because, and I've moved them all sort of to the centre of the border, and I think they're going to be really happy there. We put a bit of plant food in the bottom and we are going to water them in, even though this weather is damp and disgusting and very drizzly. Do you have drizzle in the States? I don't know whether you'd call it that, but drizzle is the perfect description for the weather we're having here in the UK at the moment, and it is not unusual for this time of year. But at least it's not raining, so that's good, because I thought I might not even get into the garden today. The weather report wasn't good. I am super happy that we've had a chance to come out here and just tackle these few projects that I really wanted to get done. It's a really good time to move plants. I mean, you could move them in the autumn if you were organised, but we weren't. But actually it's still a really good time. It's only the beginning of February, so they've got loads of time before they start, you know, springing to life in the spring and summer. So to form really decent roots and to sort of bed down into the soil, and hopefully we've given them loads of plant food and mulch, and they'll get really well established before they start having to put all their effort into growing this year. I am super excited to have that extra rose outside the bedroom, and now that I've planted it, I really do think I'd quite like to have roses all the way down that path. I'll talk to Richard about it and see what he thinks. Yeah, that's my thinking at the moment. Watch this space, I suppose. I hope you've had fun with us as we did this today, and maybe found it interesting and useful if you wanted to plant any of those plants yourself. And don't be afraid to dig out and move plants. If you don't like something, bin it, offer it to friends. I did try. And if you need to move something, then just move it. It's, you know, this is what gardening's all about, is creating that tapestry that you enjoy looking at. And the Physostegia was just, it was in the wrong place, and I wanted something lower growing on that corner there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.